because right now it was considered as a top destination for education and work, right? But with these reductions and change of policies, what do you think is going to happen in the long term?
So this came about on September 18, 2024. There was a massive announcement for Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. This is the body of the Canadian government that controls all immigration and refugee policies. And they announced staggering numbers. So they are going to decrease the total number of temporary residents in Canada from 6.5% to 5%.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Virara, your host, and before I move ahead, let me very quickly read out a very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, after this very important disclaimer, welcome back everyone to the very first episode with our new guest. Yes, we are thrilled to have you join us as we dive into the important conversations around immigration and how policies are shaping the future for professionals and entrepreneurs worldwide. Today, we have the honor of kicking off our show with an incredible guest, attorney Yameena Ansari. She is an award-winning immigration and refugee lawyer, the principal lawyer at Ansari Immigration Law, and a true expert in her field. With offices in Toronto, Calgary, and Bogota, Yameena helps overseas professionals and entrepreneurs make Canada their new home. Her expertise has been featured on platforms like CBC News, The Globe and Mail, and Al Jazeera. In today's episode, we'll be exploring a crucial topic. Are Canada's new immigration policies putting you at risk? Yameena will be sharing valuable insights to help you navigate the challenging immigration landscape. So whether you're considering relocating to Canada or just curious about how the latest policies work, you won't want to miss this. So now, without any further ado, let's give Yameena a very warm welcome. Yameena, welcome to the show and welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. This is your first time. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share my knowledge. I'm excited to interact with your users. So thank you so much for inviting me again.
Thank you so much. And I think, you are our first Canadian immigration attorney. So we are so happy to have you. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's too early for you to do a show and to go live. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Let's get started.
Yes, and guys, we are live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on Twitter, and the handle is Immigration Talk Show, so don't forget to subscribe to us. And if you have any question related to this particular topic for Yameena, make sure you post them in the comments below, and we'll be glad to take them. And yes, and if you want to get in touch with attorney Yameena Ansari, so here are her details. So make sure you give her a call and also send her an email. Now, without any further ado, let me quickly ask our very first question. So Yameena, today we are going to talk about immigration policies, Canada's new immigration policies. So, Canada is actually, if I check the news, if I go and watch the news, so Canada is always these days trending at the top in news channels. So, and about immigration also, I mean, other aspects are there, other things are there, but these immigration policies are also there. So what do you think? What can people expect from today's episode?
I think what people can expect is the unexpected. The reason that we are trending so much right now, Canadian immigration policy is at the top of everyone's mind, is that we have an election coming up.
Right.
And anytime you have an election coming up,
Yeah.
that is the time when there's a lot of political turmoil.
Right.
Because we currently have a minority government. So what that means is that we have a government that actually has not the dominant share in the parliament. Now, this is a concept that doesn't exist in a lot of countries, but we can actually have an elected ruling government which does not have 50% or more of the votes in the parliament. And that's a situation we have right now. So we have a relatively weak government. They are not extremely popular right now. Their popularity is declining. and there's an election coming up. So they're trying to quickly churn out all kinds of immigration reforms because immigration right now is top of mind for Canadians to ensure that they're going to be reelected in the next election cycle. And that's why we see so many changes coming up. It's all political as always.
Right, right. So now talking about the politics and immigration policies, my first question. So, how do you see the recent reductions in international student permits and temporary foreign worker visas, as announced by the Canadian government? How does it affect the overall landscape in Canada?
So this came about on September 18, 2024. There was a massive announcement from Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. This is the body of the Canadian government that controls all immigration and refugee policy. And they announced staggering numbers. So they are going to decrease the total number of temporary residents in Canada from 6.5% to 5% in only 2 years. So from 2024 to 2026, there's going to be a massive slash, okay? And they're going to do this by slashing the number of international study permits. So there's going to be a 10% reduction in 2025 from a further reduction in 2024. So again, over 2 years, they're going to slash the number of study permits. Not just that, historically, Canada has handed out a lot of dependent visas. So historically, if somebody comes to Canada on a study permit, on a work permit, we also love for them to bring their whole family with them. We love for them to bring their spouses and their children. This will no longer be the case. So they're going to limit work permit eligibility to spouses of master's degree students only whose program is at least 6 months in duration. Historically, we had a lot of students coming here to study at college or to study at the undergraduate level who would bring their spouses with them. This will no longer be possible. In terms of the impacts, we're going to see a lot of impacts. So one of the most common ways that people declare refugee or asylum in Canada is that they declare refugee or asylum after they arrive in the country. Now, obviously, for you to declare refugee or asylum after you arrive in Canada, you have to actually arrive in Canada. And if you have fewer temporary workers and students, temporary residents who are going to be allowed in, there will therefore be fewer people able to make those inland refugee claims. The other thing that we're noticing already, and we're going to see the full impact of this, I think, in the next year, but also in the next decades, is that we're seeing a lot of whiplash from students and educators because the Canadian immigration policy towards them is all over the place and people really don't know what to expect anymore. And that's not where people want to invest their time and money. People don't want to invest their time and money in a country where they don't know what's going to happen. Because most people who come to Canada to study, it's not just that they want the degree. It's not just that they want that international student experience. What they want is that there has historically been a very popular route from studying in Canada to getting permanent residency. And Canada has advertised this route all over the world. So very famous statement by former Immigration Minister Hussein, September 2017, saying, and I quote, "I've been very clear, not only do we want more international students, when I travel around the world, I say that we want as many of you to stay beyond your studies because they're young, who speak English or French and have studied in Canada. Why wouldn't we want these people to become our future citizens?" So a lot of the international students abroad, they heard this message and they came to Canada under the understanding that after they finished their studies, they would be welcome to stay. And this statement was only made 8 years ago, but now the rhetoric has completely changed, We see it in the news headlines, and as an immigration lawyer, I see it every day. I have clients asking me, saying, is Canada still open for business? Is Canada still inviting us? What will happen if we come to Canada? And we see how this is already starting to impact our schools. So we have international student recruiters saying no one is coming up to them. They're at these international student fairs. Nobody is approaching them. And who's going to suffer? The schools. The Canadian schools are going to suffer.
Absolutely.
Since about 2000, the number of international students at the post-secondary level in Canada has risen dramatically. So we had about 40,000 international students in the late 1990s. And now in 2020 to 2021, we have 420,000, right? So that's more than 10x, right? From 40,000 to 420,000. And why is that? Of course, people want to come study in Canada, but let's be clear, this is not an altruistic policy. The fact that these numbers have ballooned has to do entirely with Canadian interests. Okay, so government funding of these schools has remained the same. Right? Can you imagine from the 1990s, the government has continued to give the same amount of money to schools as everything else has risen in cost. So how are these institutions going to make up their deficits? Well, they're going to bring in international students who pay significantly higher fees. And especially if you look at smaller schools in more rural communities, and you look at their makeup, it's almost entirely these international students. So the schools are going to suffer. And again, if you look at the smaller and rural communities, some of these communities, the only reason they exist and are thriving is because of these schools. The schools, they employ a significant number of the people in the town. The students prop up a lot of the businesses in the towns, right? Think about students, they need to wash their clothes. They have to go to the laundromat. They need to get those snacks. They go to the shawarma place. They need a place to live. So there are entire apartment buildings that are just full of students. And then who's going to work at these businesses? Who wants to work at McDonald's, at Tim Hortons, at Burger King? Again, it's these students. So if we don't have these students coming in, you might have entire apartment buildings that are sitting empty. We might have businesses that are going to go under. We might have these schools that are struggling, and therefore we're going to see a disproportionate impact in these small and rural communities. And I think a lot of that is unnecessary, right? A lot of these international student policies were introduced because we had this media hysteria over these diploma mills. That, oh, there are these students coming to Canada to study who are not really studying. They're going to school at a mall. They're going to school at a community center. They're not getting a proper education. They're just getting a diploma. But with the changes we've seen, with the limitations on postgraduate work permits, those are no longer going to be given out to schools who are going to private public college partnership schools. I think that we have sufficiently disincentivized the students from going to these diploma mills. I think we're going to see a great caliber of students coming in. And I do think it's a time for the government to reconsider some of the international student policy that they have put in place. Because if they don't, I think there's going to be a massive impact on Canada. Not just on the international students and their families, but on Canada.
But Yameena, also with this, what do you think, or what do you see as the long-term impact of these reductions on, and the change of policies on Canada's reputation, as because right now it was considered as a top destination for education and work, right? But with these reductions and change of policies, what do you think is going to happen in the long term?
And we're seeing that already. We're seeing that Canada had a world-class educational reputation. When people wanted a great education, they thought of Canada. And now every single day, you have a new policy coming out. People cannot figure out these policies. They're so complicated. I mean, it's my job to figure them out. So I figure them out. I explain them to people. But for the average person who doesn't have a trusted advisor who is guiding them through this path, they can't figure it out. All that they hear is, oh my gosh, Canada does not want me. And then they start thinking about alternatives. And we have seen a lot of other countries who are stepping up to the plate. So China, Germany, we've even seen Kazakhstan coming out with a very aggressive international education campaign
Wow.
trying to attract those regional Central Asia students.
Mm.
So I think there is a concern here that these policies that the government is making very quickly just to get reelected, that they're not considering how this is impacting Canada's reputation abroad,
Right.
our education reputation abroad, and the schools are complaining about this. The
Mm.
schools are complaining we have not been consulted,
Mm-hmm.
and the process has not been properly designed. So the
Right.
government will come out with a policy, and the next day they just say to the institutions, implement this.
Wow.
And even me in my job, I have seen how this has led to people slipping through the cracks.
Mm.
Students who have done nothing wrong have slipped through the cracks. And a really, really sad example that I saw in my practice was there was a student, they had done everything correctly, they had submitted their documents, they had gotten accepted to a good school, but their study permit wasn't arriving. It wasn't arriving. It wasn't arriving.
Mm-hmm.
They kept asking the government, when is my study permit arriving? They even passed the date of the start date of their program. So their program had already started.
Wow.
And then finally they got the answer. The answer was that the school was supposed to forward an acceptance directly from the school to the government so the government could issue a provincial attestation letter. And the school had not done this. And there was nothing that the student could do because the mistake was not made by the student. The mistake was not made by the government. The mistake was made by the school. Because the school is trying to scramble and figure out this program. But who is caught in the middle of all of this?
The students.
It's the student who is suffering.
Right, right. Wow. This sounds so scary for the students. I mean, what to say? The schools and the government has to be really, really cautious, about doing these things. But Yameena, also I would like to know from you that do you think these changes or these policy changes, or the shift is happening because of the political tension, or does the government really have a plan and a motive behind this?
So I think that this is all driven by hysteria.
Okay.
So in Canada, like everywhere else in the world, there is a massive cost of living crisis. And I would also call it a quality of life crisis, right? So according to recent data, over half of people ages 25 to 44 report that rising prices were greatly affecting their ability to meet day-to-day expenses in spring 2024. So this is very recent data telling us that over half of the population is having a hard time just keeping up with the day-to-day.
Right.
And so there are challenges in housing. People cannot find affordable housing.
Yeah.
There are issues in finding jobs. There is higher unemployment rates than we've seen before. And public service capacity, right? So let's not forget that Canada is a country where healthcare is publicly provided. So if you have more people coming in and you have the same number of doctors and nurses, that's going to put strain on our education. In Canada, most people, they send their kids to public school. So school is also publicly provided. So all of these services have a toll placed on them. On top of that, people see that all of these temporary foreign workers are coming in. Okay, so they see that these temporary foreign workers who are willing to work for lower wages, who are not aware of their rights, so the employers are able to exploit them, who are not going to leave the job because they have closed work permits. So they see all of this. They see that their living situation is going down, and they see that all of these temporary workers are coming in. So they blame the temporary workers. They say, oh, we have all these people coming in and it's their fault. But I really think the actual problem is more nuanced than that, right?
Right.
So during COVID, Canada overheated the economy with cheap money, right? So we slashed interest rates to historical lows. And a lot of Canadians and permanent residents got COVID bailouts. So we gave out a lot of money to personal. So I also got, a COVID bailout. So to people and also corporate bailouts. And then the Bank of Canada told people, we're not going to increase interest rates for a long time. So people relied on that.
Mm-hmm.
They borrowed even more money. They bought even more things they couldn't afford. And then we had inflation. So 2021, we had sky high inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So now prices of everything are going up.
Yeah.
Right now, our interest rates are back up, which is not what the Bank of Canada said, but they're back up. Wages have not kept pace, so people can't afford things. And they need somebody to blame.
Mm.
So they blame the immigrants. And I'm not saying that the blame is all incorrectly placed,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is true that the government brought in a lot of people without tying the influx of people to housing availability, to public service sector availability,
Mm-hmm.
to job availability.
Right.
You can't just bring in, right? We talked about the 420,000 international students. That's not even keeping in mind all of the temporary foreign workers, all of the refugees, all of the permanent residents. You can't just bring in millions of people into your economy
Yeah.
and not prepare from the infrastructure side.
Mm-hmm.
You have to prepare how many more homes are these people going to need?
Right. Right.
Where are the jobs going to come from?
Mm-hmm.
Are we expanding our healthcare system? Do we have more hospitals? Do we have more schools for their kids to study in?
Right.
So yes, it's very easy to point and blame the finger on immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
but really this is due to poor planning from the policymakers. So
Right.
I think our hope is that these policies are not reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
Our hope is that these policies are being introduced and immigration and the influx of temporary foreign workers and permanent residents
Mm-hmm.
is going to be matched to how many homes are being built. What is the healthcare capacity?
Mm-hmm.
What is the job capacity?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we've seen poor planning from policymakers before. I hope for the best, but I think we should all prepare for the worst as well.
Wow. Okay, Yameena, with that, you are an immigration attorney. So, do you think, because as you mentioned that you have elections coming up very soon, so do you think a change in government might make things positive?
It's really hard for me to answer that question because obviously politics is a very complicated issue. It's
Mhm.
not just about fiscal policy and financial policy. It's also about social policy, right?
Mhm.
So right now we have the liberals in power. They are led by Pierre Trudeau's son, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
They are fairly left wing.
Mhm.
So despite Justin Trudeau in his younger years playing blackface,
Mhm.
they are generally considered to be more supportive of minorities, more
Mhm.
supportive of women.
Right.
They're willing to bail people out. They want to have stronger social services, stronger social net. And on the other hand, we have the conservatives, which are led by Pierre Poilievre.
Mhm.
And I think as we're seeing globally, we're seeing a lot rise in the populist movement.
Mhm.
We're seeing a rise in leaders who are divisive, who are right wing, and that is Pierre Poilievre. And some of the things that he says, I really like. I like that he talks about the fact that immigration needs to be matched to employment. I like the fact that he says immigration needs to be matched
Mhm.
to housing availability. I
Mhm.
like all of these things. I think we should be making smart immigration policy.
Mhm.
That being said, obviously this is a dynamic decision, and am I okay with some of his social stances? That is something that I think people need to decide for themselves. What are the politics that are important to them? Is it social policy, fiscal policy, and so on?
Right. And but Yameena, if you're okay to talk about that, when we had our first meeting, you also told me that you yourself are an immigrant, right? And was it difficult for you or was it easy for you? How was the journey for you?
I think that it's hard for all immigrants who come to Canada, and I think that there are barriers that are put in place that are unnecessary. One of the most common barriers that immigrants experience when they come to this country is that their educational credentials are not recognized. And
Mm.
this is also not just horrible for the immigrants themselves, it's also a real failure on how this impacts the Canadian economy. So the Canadian economy specifically targets market sectors where we need talent. So we try to import a lot of healthcare workers. We try to import a lot of tech workers. We try to import a lot of people that work in agriculture, people who work in transport, because we know there is a labor market need. We import all of these people, but then we do not provide them with a clear, easy, fast, and affordable pathway to requalify, right? So, for example, my mother, she was a physician in Pakistan. She went to medical school. She did a house job. She became qualified. She was working at a very good hospital. And when she came to Canada, she had to rewrite all of her exams, which took years and thousands of dollars. She had to redo her residency. She had to go and live in a rural area and practice there for many years. And finally, she was able to become a physician here. And kudos to my mom that she did that with the support of my dad. But the reality is most immigrants are not going to go through that process. Right? Canada right now has the most overqualified entry level jobs class. So what I mean is, if you are having a heart attack on the streets of Toronto, I would encourage you to get in the first Uber, because good chance you're going to be driven to the hospital by a doctor. And this is something that Canada is very proud of, that, oh, we have all these people working entry-level jobs who are overqualified. I don't think this is something we should be proud of. The person who is an engineer in their home country should not be bagging my grocery. Okay? So this is really horrible for the immigrants who were brought here for their skills. They were told, we need engineers, we need doctors, we need pharmacists. So they came to Canada with that promise. And then they get here and it takes forever to get requalified. Most of them are not going to be able to undertake that journey. And this is terrible for the Canadian economy. We brought these people to serve a certain purpose, and they're not going to be able to do that.
So absolutely, and because you're not only because of this, you're not only crushing the people's dream, but you're also making them question that why, rather than being in their homeland, why did they choose to move abroad, right? Because if they're moving to a foreign land, they definitely have things planned for them, which are which definitely seem better for them, right? And if this is what they are going to end up doing, so it would have been better for them to be in their homeland and to choose that path. Thank you so much for answering the question, Yameena. Now I would quickly like to move to my next question. Yeah, please.
On that point, Rajni, and I think all you have to do is open up Reddit, type in Reddit Immigration Canada, and you will see the questions that people ask. People say, do you still want to come to Canada?
Wow.
Is Canada still open for business? And you'll see other immigrants responding and saying, don't come to Canada anymore. It's done here. The cost of living is too high. You can't find an affordable job. You work yourself to death, and at the end of the day, there's no family waiting for you. You live in a small apartment. There's no hope. And I think we're seeing that is a lot of people abroad are asking themselves that question, is Canada still the land of our hopes and dreams, or should we just stay at home?
Right.
And that's not what Canada wants. We want and need that qualified immigrants are still coming.
Okay, so now with that, Yameena, I would like to quickly move into my next question. And people have already started commenting their questions. Alexandro is here. He says, good afternoon from Brazil. Hi, Alexandro. Good afternoon to you too. And let us know if you have any question for Yameena. We would love for her to answer. And then RK is also here. Hi RK, Sri Lata is here, Kirti is here, Vaishnavi. Hi Vaishnavi, Gautam is also here. They have posted a lot of questions for you. We are definitely going to take those questions, but in a bit. Before I take viewers' question, Yameena, one more question for you. So, what do you think are the reasons behind the government decision to limit the number of temporary residents?
I think we've already touched on this. I don't want to beat a horse to death, but definitely I think it has to do with the satisfaction that
Mhm.
Canadians feel with their own situation. They see that when they go to the hospital, they have to wait hours and hours to see a doctor.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately become almost every week there's a story coming out about how somebody died at the ER waiting to see a doctor.
Mhm.
They see that their kids' schools are full, right? Every single year we are making class sizes
Yeah.
bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
They see how hard it is for them to get a job, right? I know for me as an employer, when I post a job,
Mhm.
I have hundreds of overqualified candidates who will apply.
Mhm.
They see that employers are treating them poorly, right? They see that because of the temporary foreign workers who will accept lower wages, who will accept poor working conditions, that it is bringing down the work culture overall. Employers don't feel like they have to treat their workers well or compensate them fairly.
Mhm.
So they feel that, okay, our living situation is getting worse. Who can we blame? We can blame the influx of people that are coming in.
Mhm.
It's their fault. It's their fault that there's more of them that need health care, so there's less beds for me. It's their fault that their kids also need to study, so my kids are getting less attention from the teacher.
Mhm.
It's their fault that they are willing to work longer hours, work harder for less money, and I don't want to live like that. And I think they blame immigrants rather than the policymakers who brought in all these immigrants without thinking about how are we going to accommodate all these people. Because generally, when you have more people in an economy, it's supposed to help your economy grow.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a bad thing. It's supposed to be a good thing to spur
Mhm.
the economy on if it's managed and done properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you, Alexandro, for your comment. Let us know if you have a question. He really is loving this session and your insightful answers. Thank you so much, Alexandro, for your comment. Let me quickly take RK's question. RK says bad actors are clogging immigration. It's not just Canada, UK, New Zealand, and Australia are doing the same thing. The genuine students are suffering. Bad actors are selling, aisles selling LMIA. And he also has a second part. He says, if you see Canada getting a little restrictive, something is going wrong because Canada is one of the most pro immigrant countries. The government and lobby should be blamed. What do you have to say, Yameena?
I really struggle with this in my practice. The amount of people that come to me and want me to sell them LMIAs, the
Mhm.
amount of people that come to me and say, tell me which documents you need, I will find them. I will have them created. And I have to explain to those clients, I don't sell LMIAs. I can help you
Mhm.
get a legitimate LMIA job. That's something I can do is help you get a legitimate LMIA job, but I cannot sell you an LMIA. You cannot create documents.
Mhm.
I need to look at the documents you have, and then we will figure out a plan. So this is definitely a major issue. And I'm really struggling with how are we going to combat this issue? Because so me as a Canadian lawyer, I am highly regulated. I'm regulated in the things that I say. For example, you would ask me to comment on American immigration policy during this session, and
Mhm.
I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to comment on areas of law that I'm
Mhm.
not licensed in.
Mhm.
Whereas somebody else who is not regulated at the same level as I am, they're free to do all of these things.
Mhm.
And there is nobody who is overseeing them, who is going to catch them. So the lawyers are highly regulated, but if we look at even the regulated Canadian immigration consultants who are supposed to be highly regulated,
Mhm.
they're on their third regulatory body now. So their regulatory bodies were so ineffective that they collapsed several times. They've been rebuilt several times.
Mhm.
And we have people telling us that I go and complain to this regulatory body and they don't even do anything,
Mm.
right? So we have the lawyers, we're decently regulated. The regulated Canadian immigration consultants should be better regulated, but are not.
Mhm.
But then we have this massive problem, which is all these ghost consultants. So these people that actually have no training, no education,
Mhm.
might not even have any experience,
Mhm.
who are basically running the show. And they're saying all kinds of things that don't make any sense. For example, I had all of these clients coming to me and saying, I want a student work visa. I said, okay, what does it mean? They said, oh, child work visa. When your kid comes to study in Canada and then you come with them on a work permit. And I have so many Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Afghanis coming to me and saying, okay, I'll send my kid to school in Canada and I'll come too to work. And this is being advertised left, right, and center by these ghost consultants. This is not a real program. So if you're watching this and you have seen this advertised on Instagram, there is no such program like this, okay? If you send your minor child to come study in Canada, yes, you may be eligible for a work permit, but it is going to be the work permit that is available to anybody. That work permit is not specific to sending your minor child to come study in Canada. So we have a lot of bad actors, but we have no way to go after these ghost consultants.
Yeah.
Because they are not regulated by anybody. So if you go and complain to the Law Society and say, do something about the ghost consultant, the Law Society is going to say, they're not our member, they're not a lawyer. And you go and you complain to the College of Immigration, Canadian College of Immigration and Consultants, and you say, do something about these ghost consultants, they're going to say the same thing. They're going to say, they're not our member, we can't do anything. So yes, we do have people who are buying LMIAs, we have people who are creating IELTS results, but how is that possible? It's because of this whole network, this whole black market network that has come up of these people that are selling programs that don't exist, and we have no way to shut these people down.
I think the government should definitely do something about it, right? Because they are always coming up with these new policies. So if they can come up with these interesting policies, then they can definitely come up with something that can track these ghost consultants. What do you think, Yameena?
I think that would be a great idea because I just see the impact that these ghost consultants have on people's lives and how people's lives are destroyed. So I had a couple clients that they told me they were trying for 2 years to get permanent residency. They were waiting for 2 years to get permanent residency. And that didn't make any sense to me, okay? Because a express entry profile only lasts on the Canadian government system for 1 year. So how can somebody be trying for 2 years to get permanent residency? Because if you have a profile after 1 year, it's going to get deleted anyways. If there's a program that you're trying for, if my client has not been selected in 6 to 8 months, I say we have to try a different approach. This approach is not going to work. So then I took over their file and I looked at their file and I figured out that their consultant had never even applied for any program for them. So there was nothing that had even happened. And I see this again and again, actually, that people's hopes and dreams are being dashed, but it creates a negative impression of those people who are applying about Canada. Right? So same as these people who are coming to Canada hoping to get a work permit due to their child's minor study permit, or the people that are waiting for years and years to come to Canada, their ghost consultant is leading them on. Because they don't have enough knowledge and awareness, they think the problem is Canada. They get here and they think, oh, I was told there is a child student work permit visa. Oh, why is it taking so long for me to get permanent residency? They don't realize the problem is not Canada. The problem is the ghost consultant. So I think the government should do something because it's impacting our global brand image.
Exactly.
People are thinking
not just people's lives, but
there's
something.
something. People are thinking that we're being sold this Canadian dream, but that Canadian dream is something that immigration ghost consultant came up with in their own mind.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of, the legal avenues, because how can people get connected with the right kind of information? So, Yamina, if you can please tell what legal avenues are available to individuals who may be affected by the new policies or who may be affected by these ghost consultants, right? So, and maybe facing the deportation problem, so or denied work permits. So, what legal avenues are available for them to get the right kind of assistance and information?
So if you are going to hire somebody, I would ask them which law society is regulating them. Every single lawyer in Canada is regulated by a law society, and all of the law societies have their websites online. Go type in that person's name and you will see a full report. So if you type in my name on the Law Society of Ontario, you will see my name. You will see that there have never been any complaints made against me. There are no regulatory proceedings against me. You will see which area of law I practice in. You will see my address. You will see my phone number. That's what you want to see. You want to see, is this person actually licensed by a proper law society? Because they're going to be regulated. And the other thing is that they are going to be insured. So I am insured. I have insurance for any mistake that I make. Okay. So if your lawyer makes a mistake, you can sue them and you can actually get some money back. Obviously, getting the money is not as good as getting the outcome that you deserve.
Right.
But at least if you sue them, you get some money, you get compensated for the mistakes that they have made, and then you can use that money to get proper legal advice from somebody else. That's not going to happen if you hire a ghost consultant. If they make a mistake, first of all, you probably won't even know. And secondly, there's nowhere that you can go to complain or to get your money back. So that's one thing is, if you're hiring a lawyer, figure out who they're regulated by. Or if you want to hire a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, they also have a website, the CICC website. Again, go type in their name. Is their name on there? The other thing I would say is look at the photo. So we have a lot of impersonators out there. We have ghost consultants who are using the face, the name of regulated consultants. So one of my colleagues actually, she outed somebody recently, very popular Instagram consultant, and she found out that he was using the photo of the mayor of Ottawa. So this consultant was pretending that he was the mayor of Ottawa. And now obviously the mayor of Ottawa is too busy to be a ghost immigration consultant on the side.
Right.
So I would say make sure this person is regulated by a law society or the or CCIC. Go on the website and then meet the person and see their face. Is this the actual person that I have hired? So that is how you're going to get proper legal advice. If you cannot afford legal advice, I would say go to the actual IRCC website. Don't read the ads, the social media ads. Like I said, there is a lot of misinformation on those social media ads. They are trying to take your money. They're not necessarily trying to bring you to Canada. They just want your money.
Yeah.
Okay, so go and actually read on the IRCC website. I know it's very confusing. Even some of the information on there is out of date because as you know, the policy changes so fast.
Right.
Sometimes the RCC website cannot keep up and there is outdated information on there, but it's going to be the best information that you can get at that time if you're not able to pay for a competent legal advisor.
Right, or maybe if you can directly get in touch with attorney Yameena Ansari herself. Here are her details. You can give her a call on this number, which is +1 647 494 8299. Excuse me. I would like to repeat the number, +1 647 494 8299. You can also email her at immigrate@ansarilaw.ca. IMMIGRATE@ANSARILAW.ca. You can also visit her website, which is www.ansarilaw.ca. Yes, and you can get in touch with her regarding your problems and regarding if you're facing any issues with the ghost consultants. So she's the right person for you. And Okay, RK is back and he says, yes, it's true. Now, these fake social media consultants are telling students if your work permit is going to expire, just file for asylum to get a new work permit. They are tarnishing Canada's image. Is that so, Yameena?
This has come up a lot recently in the media. A lot of people are angry because we have seen a massive spike in the number of study permit holders that are declaring asylum. And I have seen people making very harsh judgments against these students. I've seen people saying if somebody files for asylum after coming into this country as a study permit holder, we should deport them right away. I've seen people saying that these are all fraudsters. Now, from my side, I actually have several clients who I have helped who have come to Canada on study permits and who have filed asylum. And I want to talk from a more empathetic lens. I want to explain their stories a little bit because obviously my clients are not able to explain their stories themselves. What happens a lot of times is that somebody is living in a state of persecution and they don't even realize it, right? The bird does not realize that it was in the cage until it is set free. So you have somebody living in their home country and they don't realize it, but they're gay. You have somebody living in their home country and they are being persecuted because of their gender. They are experiencing, for example, a lot of sexual harassment, or their ex-boyfriend is stalking them. Or you have somebody living in their home country and they're experiencing religious persecution. They're a member of a minority faith, and because of that, they cannot get jobs. People, they are increased risk of being bombed, of being harmed. But to them, this is normal. To them, it's normal to not be honest about their sexual orientation. To them, it's normal to experience gender-based violence. To them, it's normal that they would not be free to practice their faith, right? Because they're in this cage. Then they come to Canada, whether it's as a student, a worker, a visitor, whatever, and they realize my whole life I have been living in a cage and I didn't realize it. Now I can be my true self. I can practice my religion openly. I can be free from gender-based violence. And that's when they decide to file the refugee claim. Okay, I'm not saying that there are not people who are filing fraudulent refugee claims. There definitely are. For example, one time I had somebody consult with me who had gotten refugee on the basis of sexual orientation. So he'd gotten refugee on the basis that he was gay, and he was consulting with me because he wanted to now get married to a woman. And he said, oh, is that going to be a problem for my refugee claim? And I said, I don't understand. I thought you were gay. If you're gay, why do you want to marry a woman now? So there are people who are taking advantage of the system, but I think there are also people who didn't realize how oppressed they were until they came here. And the other thing I will say is a lot of these students previously, they had a plan to come and stay in Canada, right? Again, to be free. But there were so many ways that they could do that, right? They were planning on doing that through express entry. They were planning on doing that through postgraduate work permit, right? They had this whole plan, and now that plan is not going to work anymore because there have been so many changes. But they really need to stay here, right? They're scared. They're scared to go back home. And now they realize, okay, this is my only option. I have to take this route. So I know it's easy. People are very angry about the spike in asylum claims by study permit holders. I know that it's very easy to hate them. Yes, there are bad actors, like the person that I mentioned who made the fake sexual orientation claim. But there are also legitimate claims in the middle. And I think for me, I'm a very empathetic person, so I try not to judge people.
Absolutely, and you're an attorney, and if you judge people, then it's not going to be easy for your job, right?
No, it's my job to help people and
Absolutely.
support them.
Yes.
So I do my best to support my clients and be there for them. Yeah.
Absolutely, regardless of them being from any race or any country or anywhere. Thank you so much for such detailed and insightful answers, Yameena. RK, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for continuously commenting. If you have more questions, you can continue to post them in the comments below. Maybe we can take, if we don't have enough time in this episode, in this show, then we can definitely take those questions on our next coming episode with Yameena, and whenever that we have that with her. So there are still a lot of questions, but Yamina, I don't think so. You have enough time. It's 11:55, and but still, if you would allow, so I would like to take those questions, those short questions, rapid questions that we decided. So my first question about LMIA is: what is an LMIA, and why is it important for employers?
So an LMIA is a labor market impact assessment, and it is the proof that the employer needs to get from the Canadian government that they have attempted to hire a Canadian citizen or permanent resident for the job, and they have been unsuccessful. So once the Canadian employer proves to the Canadian government that they have been unable to find a local, so a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident for the job, after that, the Canadian employer can go and hire a temporary foreign worker for the position. So number one is LMIA. After you get the LMIA, number two, you apply for the work permit.
Perfect. And how does the LMIA process differ from from other Canadian work permit applications?
So generally in Canada, we have two types of work permits. We have a closed work permit and we have an open work permit. When you have an open work permit, you do not need to go through the LMIA process. Usually when you have a closed work permit, you need to go through the LMIA process. Now, the LMIA process, it does take some time. It takes a minimum of 4 weeks that you need to advertise the job, and you need to interview qualified locals, so qualified Canadian citizens or permanent residents. You take all that evidence of recruitment that you tried to find a local, you submit it to the Canadian government, and you say, I tried to hire a local, I was unsuccessful. Now, please allow me to hire a temporary foreign worker.
Perfect. What documents are needed to apply for an LMIA?
So there are quite a few documents required from the employer side. Some of the most important documents, like I mentioned, are the proof of recruitment. So demonstrating that the job posting was up, how many candidates applied, how many candidates were interviewed. Another important aspect is the business legitimacy document. So proving that you have a legitimate Canadian business, that you are paying taxes, that you are offering a good or service in Canada, that you are generating income. So everything that shows that you are a legitimate running Canadian business. The last important component is the fees. So this is why it's impossible to sell LMIAs, because the LMIA fees are supposed to be paid entirely by the employer. The employer should be paying the fee to the government for the LMIA, and they should also be paying the lawyer fees. So a lot of times I have workers who are approaching me asking me for LMIAs and LMIA work permits, and I tell them, come have your boss talk to me, because your boss is supposed to be paying for this process for me and to the government. So those are the three important documents: the fees being paid by the employer, business legitimacy documents from the employer, and proof of recruitment from the employer.
Okay, and how long does it typically take to process an LMIA application?
This is one of the funny things where there is a massive time difference. So we have some global skills strategies, LMIAs, which are processed in 2 weeks. You heard that right. In 14 days, you could land in Canada. That is only for certain qualified candidates. There are very limited eligibility requirements for that. But then we have other LMIAs that could take up to 90 business days to process. And these processing times are changing every month. So every month I check the page to see what is the processing time at this time.
And what are the most common reasons for LMIA refusals?
So the most common reasons for LMIA refusals is the lack of business legitimacy. So the immigration officer believes that you have a fake business that is just set up to bring in temporary foreign workers. You're not actually providing a Canadian good or service. The most common reasons for refusals of LMIA work permits, right? Like I said, LMIA is separate. After you get LMIA, you get an LMIA work permit. The most common reason for refusal for LMIA work permit is that the candidate is not qualified. So you have somebody who doesn't have the requisite language level to do the job. You have somebody who doesn't have the requisite experience for the job they're supposed to be doing. You have somebody who doesn't have the education for the job they're going for. So it's really important before you apply for an LMIA work permit to make sure that you are actually qualified for the job that you're being offered in Canada.
And can an LMIA application be submitted online or must it be done in person?
So the Canadian government right now, they have made it clear that their preference is to receive most applications online. There are a few limited types of applications that should be submitted by mail, but by and large, the Canadian government prefers to receive things online.
Okay, and what are the steps employer must follow to demonstrate the need for a foreign worker?
So like I said, they have to post the job on quite a few job sites. The number of job sites will depend on whether they are applying for a high-wage LMIA or low-wage LMIA. They will have to post the job on those specific job sites for a minimum of 4 weeks. For our clients, we actually recommend that they keep the job posting up until the LMIA is approved, because that shows to the immigration officer that you were extremely thorough. Then if any 4-star candidates apply on Job Bank, those 4-star candidates must be interviewed. We also generally interview candidates from some of the other job sites, again, because we like to put forward a very strong LMIA application. Then the employer needs to keep track of the exact reasons for why candidates were not hired. All of that is provided to the Canadian government along with the business legitimacy documents. And sometimes there is also an interview that takes place. There might be an interview that takes place between the employer and the immigration officer where we negotiate the terms of the LMIA, right? So there are going to be obligations that are put on the employer for the LMIA and for the employee for the LMIA. So sometimes these are negotiated between us and the immigration officer. And after that, hopefully the LMIA is approved.
Great. And how can an employer show how they have made sufficient efforts to hire a Canadian citizen or permanent resident?
So it's really, really important that when an employer is putting up an LMIA job posting, they ask the candidates to explain whether they are Canadian citizens or permanent residents. So based on that, we can see how many Canadian citizens and permanent residents have applied for a job, and we have to explain why each Canadian citizen or permanent resident was not qualified, whether they didn't have the requisite experience. Maybe they live too far away. Maybe the hours don't work for them. Maybe they do not have the requisite language level, and so on.
Okay, and one last question. I still have a lot of questions, but one last question for this episode, Yameena. Are there any exemptions to the LMIA process for certain positions or individuals?
There's a lot of exemptions to the LMIA process, and that's actually what I usually try to do is I try to get my clients out of the LMIA process and into a process that doesn't require recruiting. For example, the intra-company transfer. So this is a program where if you have a multinational company, you can transfer an employee in a certain position, so they have to be management level or specialized worker. You can transfer them from the overseas company to the Canadian company without getting an LMIA. We also have the International Experience Canada program. This is for young people, usually between ages 18 to 35, but the ages will depend on the country that you come from, and they can come to Canada and work for a period of 1 to 3 years, depending on the country that they're from, and get an open work permit. They can work anywhere or not work if they want, and they can travel at the same time. So there are a lot of exemptions to the LMIA regime, and that's part of my job as a legal strategist, is to figure out how to get my clients outside of the LMIA regime.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that rapid round, rapid answers. Thank you so much, Yameena, and everyone. Thank you for watching. If you want to catch all the highlights, including the shorts and reels from this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll get all the best moments delivered straight to your feed. And Yameena, it was such a great episode. Thank you so much for being here. I have so many more questions that I would like to ask and I would like for you to answer, but I don't think that we have enough time. But we would love for you to come back for maybe a part two, an episode two, so that we can cover the remaining questions and maybe we can come up with a completely new topic. We can talk about LMIA in detail. How about that?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next session for sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. It was great reading your questions. Thank you for being such an interactive group of people.
Thank you so much. And guys, if you want to get in touch with Attorney Yameena Ansari, here are her details. You can give her a call on the number 647-494-8299. I would like to repeat it, 647-494-8299. You can email her at immigrate@ansarilaw.ca, and you can also visit our website, which is www.ansarilaw.ca. Thank you so much, Yameena. It was your first episode with Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. It was a blockbuster episode. You had a blockbuster debut. Thank you so much for being here. Can't wait for our next episode now.
Thanks so much, Rajni. I had so much fun being here.
Thank you so much. You have a great day ahead.
You too.
And to our lovely audience, thank you so much for tuning in and for posting your questions. We really love taking your question and asking from our guests. So make sure you stay tuned to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show for more such immigration episode. And for now, I'll have to take your leave. But you guys stay tuned and keep on watching Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Bharara signing off for now. Take care.